So anyone who has questions, you can share them in English if you speak English, and Pep will translate, or you speak in Spanish. Podéis, no sé si me está traduciendo Pep. Questions, comments. So Karen is asking in the chat that when the children evaluate each other, it gives them a recognition. It's like every child recognizes the other child. And what about a 360? This es más una recomendación que haces, ¿no? No una pregunta. I think it's not a question, Karen. ¿Es una pregunta o no, Karen? Patricia.
Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Kenneth. It was very interesting. I have a very silly question, actually. My question is about the positive aging, for instance, how to balance the awareness of reality, because my body is changing, and the same time to recognize that the way I name this change can affect how I feel, so my well-being. I don't know if my question is clear. So how to balance the recognition of something which is also bad,
yeah,
and the possibility, the opportunity that might come from this changing.
Yeah, you know, and this is not always easy. Because most of what we call decline, there is so much agreement about that it's very hard to find another way to look at it. It is very helpful for me to have other people around, because to create an alternative also needs to have a group who are willing and able and supportive of generating that alternative. I mean, one of the things about communities for the aging is generally you get that kind of support. You get the emphasis. You can talk about your illnesses and so on, and then laugh about it, and then go on to talk about something else. But it's hard. Tennis was a real part of my life for about 30 years. I played it a lot. I was like I do that several times a week. But over time, I had a problem with my left hand, and began to atrophy the muscles. So I couldn't throw the ball up, and had to stop. This is a major sort of shift in my whole life pattern. What it required was finding an alternative, which was also attractive, which people would say, look, try golf. That is really a wonderful sport. You can play golf your entire life. There are other people who do it, and it worked. But it becomes more and more difficult as you get older. When you start having heart problems and so on, it becomes more difficult. But I have seen time and time again, by having communal support, you can locate ways of finding a silver lining or another opportunity. Now I have the time to garden. Now I have the time to read, which I'd never had time for before, and continue on like that.
Thank you, Ken. Any other question?
I can go back to the 360.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be said for having students evaluate each other. I've seen that work really well. For example, when students are preparing or something they wrote, And rather than the teacher evaluating, having 2 or 3 other students who tell the student, the writer, what did they like about that? What did they think could be done better? So you get 3 or 4 people who are helping you, and you help them. The essay becomes better, and you have again created a relationship of interdependency. So I really liked it. It was really wonderful to see that. 360 is a little bit of a problem because you are still the center of the evaluation. Everybody is telling you about you, which can also, if it becomes what they like about you, fine. But if it becomes where your shortcomings are and you realize, oh, they don't like this and they don't like that, all you need is 10 students to tell you you're great and 1 to tell you you're horrible. That's what you'll remember. So it becomes tricky about how you do that.
Thank you, Ken. ¿Alguien quiere preguntar, compartir?
Yo,
Beto. Y Rafa, si
Sí.
quieres compartir también luego. Beto, sí.
gracias. Wow. Me inspira mucho lo que plantea Kenneth y me hace reflexionar 2 cosas, porque el sistema tan perverso que de alguna manera estamos, en el que la evaluación es la predominante y nos obligan en las escuelas a de alguna manera a ser competitivos más que colaborativos.
Déjame traducir hasta aquí, por favor. So, Ken, he hasn't finished, but I stopped him to translate. So, he was very, very inspired. And he's, of course, concerned about how the schools work in a very sort of perverso, no sé cómo se dice en inglés, alguien me echa un cable.
Tyranny.
About the tyranny, yes. So he wants to share a question about that. Sí, Beto.
Sí. Entonces, yo trabajo también con profesores en donde si intentamos cambiar el sistema, también pasa porque los profesores pasen a colaborar, ¿sí? a querer colaborar entre ellos para hacer un sistema también colaborativo.
So we also need that the teachers change. He works with teachers, and the teachers have to be open to collaborate with each other and to be more in a collaborative mode.
No.
Sí.
Sí.
Beto, sí.
Sí. Y también trabajo con organizaciones y equipos, y en los equipos, según lo que plantea Kenneth, está en los miembros del equipo está la decisión o elección de querer estar ahí en el equipo.
Sí.
Y sí, dale.
No, Didi, ¿cuál es tu pregunta? En ese,
Y cuando uno decide estar ahí, de alguna manera uno está abierto a colaborar y a conocerse y a conocer el punto de vista del otro, si es que lo facilita una estructura. ¿Sí?
Vale. Sometimes he works with teams, and what happens that the people choose to be in the team, but to have a collaborative team, the structure, like the scaffolding, has to help, and sometimes the scaffolding doesn't help, that the people collaborate with each other. I think he hasn't finished his question. Sí.
En cambio, en la escuela, en los colegios, dado el sistema en el que estamos, pienso en mis hijas, que ellas quisieran colaborar y tienen trabajos colaborativos. Sin embargo, por ejemplo, sus compañeritos no están en la misma sintonía, se distraen, no quieren hacerlo, y ellas sí quieren hacerlo. Entonces, empujadas por el querer lograr una nota, se les hace más difícil, ¿sí?
Yeah, and thinking about his daughters, if they want to collaborate, but the boys in class, they are careless, they don't want to collaborate, and the system puts pressure that the evaluation, the grade they get, that is the most important.
Exacto. ¿Cómo hacerlo dadas las condiciones que están ellas en el colegio, sabiendo que quieren colaborar, pero el sistema las obliga a sacar un resultado?
So I have my daughters, they want to collaborate, and this is what, like at home, what he tries to share, but the system in the school doesn't allow it or help.
Porque eso significaría, según lo que plantea Kenneth, cambiar la estructura.
Because the scaffolding, the structure should change then.
But you put your finger on the real problem, which is assessment, that is grading. Because students who are good students don't want to work collaboratively because it pulls the grade down. Teachers have a hard time doing collaboration because they have to grade it, and it's difficult to do that. If you didn't have testing and grading, collaboration would be much, much more popular, and in fact, it would create enthusiasm. To watch a group of people trying to do something together. For example, I've watched a class given them how to present a topic to their classmates. Right? They have to prepare how they're going to do that. And let's say they have a week to prepare. They can work wonderfully together and make very creative ways of communicating and caring for each other, because some will know about how to do videos, others will know how to create laughter, others will know how to make PowerPoint, others will know how to talk clearly. It will bring multiple skills together to do this. But again, if at the end of the day, there's going to be assessment and the students don't make high marks on national tests, the teacher gets bad marks, it kills the whole initiative.
Thank you.
I wanted to say one little thing just as a reminder. You can put groups together to collaborate, teachers, students, whatever. But just being together doesn't necessarily lead in good directions. So we go back to that second part of this talk on dialogue. How do you generate the kind of dialogue? What are the questions you need to ask to get it moving in a right direction? What is the form of the dialogue? So creating the form of the dialogue is really important.
Thank you. Pepe, y si puede ser concreto en la pregunta, lo digo porque quedan pocos minutos para que dé tiempo a ver si podemos plantear 2 o 3 más preguntas. Pepe, adelante.
Sí. Buenas tardes. Gracias, Kenneth, por el compartir. Hablaste en la respuesta anterior de las herramientas que son necesarias para poder poner la semilla de esta nueva cultura, por llamarlo de alguna manera. Mi experiencia ha sido en escuelas donde hay experiencias, por ejemplo, de asambleas, de construcción común, que algunas de estas no llegan a buen término por la falta de herramientas concretas en aquellos que animamos estos procesos. Entonces, si podría nombrar 3 herramientas concretas que pueden ayudar a inyectar este tipo de dinámica en nuestras instituciones.
Yes, he works with schools, and you talked about collaborative methods, and he would like very concretely, could you share like 3 collaborative methods for facilitators like him, because sometimes these proposals of facilitating a collaborative way of working needs that we have the tools, that we know how to do it, and sometimes we don't know how to do it. So could you share like some practical tools?
You know, better, I mean, I can talk a little bit about that, but there are writings about this, and I'm not sure what's available in Spanish. Most of those come out, I must say, out of organizations and not out of education. But there are books in education on collaborative classrooms, and I'd be glad to share those titles. After this is over, I can write to Miriam. I can also share a bibliography on generating forms of dialogue that might be useful. Some of those will be translated. So it's just to share them here. It'll only be just a tiny, tiny bit of what's possible. All right, just a little bit. I sit on a board of an institute, and there was some tension in that board that we're developing. So the board itself had to talk about, hey, how could we do this better? But putting that aside, we decided to start the meeting not with business, but each of us would talk a little bit about what happened in our lives. You know, what am I excited about now? What am I bothered about? Just a few minutes of just sharing. It began that way, and it's just changed the feeling. I mean, these became human beings and not people to argue against. That was one. Secondly, we rotated the leadership. So there wasn't just one leader each time of the meeting. That leadership would shift from week to week, so that we disturbed the hierarchy of the board. So there weren't those who were in charge and those who were new. It disturbed the hierarchy. Now those things were just ways of altering the form of the dialogue, which helped us minimize the tension. Oh, a third one. Divide into subgroups for different issues, but they would also check back what they were doing periodically with the group. So whatever is being decided has also been shared with the group from week to week. Now, I don't know whether that's relevant to what you're doing. By the way, Miriam, are you translating any of this? You are.
Yeah, Pep is translating. We have a friend who has offered to translate, and actually he's a director of or vice director of a school. So
Pep.
he translates. Pep, yeah, he's translating. We have another question from Claudia.
Hi, Ken. I was wondering about the mental health. There seems to be a lot of pathologies, problems with mental health. How do you think these scaffolds could change the way that people relate to their problems, maybe, or whatever they are experienced in the issues they experience and that are diagnosed as mental health and mental problems?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really excellent question, and we could talk for a long time about these issues. I mean, at the outset, there's the problem of how people become diagnosed as mentally unhealthy. That whole diagnostic procedure, because we are scaffolded by an industrial system at this point in which people make money because you are unhealthy. And it's not just therapists, it's pharmaceutical companies who have a big investment and make a lot of money because you're unhealthy, which means the more information you have, the more categories you have for thinking, oh, what's my problem is I'm mentally I'm depressed. I am depressed. The industrial system is set in motion. If you think you're depressed, then you say, I need a therapist and I need an antidepressant, and the whole system is set in motion once again. So depression, in some way, the very idea of depression, it is a byproduct of an industry. All right. So just putting that aside, that's step number one. Step two is if you have people who feel they're depressed, if that's the way they've died, how can you generate alternatives? Now, again, I'm not organized to talk about all this today, but I have a lot to say. I've been very interested, for example, in a large group of ex-schizophrenics who are saying we do not have a disease. We are treated as if we have a disease. We listen to voices, but listening to voices saying is not a disease. It's one of the variations in being alive. Don't treat us as disease. Now that is and they have alternatives. They have alternative ways of treating each other or themselves. If I'm listening to a voice and it's bothering me, I have a list of a whole lot of alternative ways of thinking. Listen to music. Go for a walk. Find some friends to be with. But don't go to a hospital because that's not essential. You can do this with a support group who are also in that condition. I mean, this is just one of those. I'm also very impressed by a movement called open dialogue, which takes the assessment of mental illness out of the hands of psychiatrists and puts it in the hands of a group of people. So you have your child, for example, is doing things that are very damaging. And rather than taking it to a psychiatrist and giving pharmacology and expensive treatments, bring in the family, the child, the adolescent's friends, right? Maybe the grandmother, and you have an open dialogue. Now, what do? The psychiatrist is there too, maybe a social worker. Meet together, decide, what should we do here? Very seldom is it become mental illness. Very seldom does one ever go to a hospital. It becomes a collective way of trying to get on in life without finally getting to mental illness as as the cause. I just put those out there as this moment. I could say a lot more, but you see the direction.
Yeah, I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Very inspiring. We want more of this in the world, huh? ¿Algún comentario, alguna pregunta, any question?
By the way, thank you for these questions. These are really good comments, full of significance. I appreciate that. That's not always the case.
¿Alguien más quiere compartir antes de que cerremos?
Miriam, por
Sí.
acá, sí. A mí, primero agradecer todo lo compartido, maravilloso. Y me surge la inquietud de qué pasaría si empezáramos desde la más temprana infancia a compartir distinciones del lenguaje a los niños y a los profesores para comprender cuando hablamos de hechos, afirmaciones o juicios e interpretaciones. Y ahí pensaba en las herramientas de los diálogos apreciativos, del feedback apreciativo, si eso lo aprendiéramos desde jardín de infantes a trabajar, ¿cuántas de estas formas de dar feedback, por ejemplo, en que no estoy hablando a la persona, sino que es un hecho objetivo, y si eso lo aprendiéramos desde lo más temprano posible, ¿cuántas malas interpretaciones, malos entendidos nos ahorraríamos centrándonos en las relaciones y en las emociones? No sé si fue muy largo.
She said, talking about judgment, interpretation, and facts. So when we are children, if we would start from early ages to differentiate in terms of language when we talk about something that it is actually a fact, or it is an interpretation, or it is a judgment. For example, when we give feedback, do we give feedback out of an interpretation or it's a fact? And how, for example, appreciative inquiry feedback, it's more appreciative. So how would it be is if from childhood we would learn to differentiate between the language that talks about facts, the language that is actually an interpretation, and the language that is a judgment?
It's a really good question, but it takes a little more time to unpack an answer than I should take. But look, this is a bold comment. Everything we call a fact is simultaneously an interpretation and a judgment. That very distinction is a problem. Now let me talk about that a little bit. Let's take that child who we treat as attention deficit. Now, is that a fact or not? It is a fact in psychiatry. I mean, they have scales to measure that. They can get other people to agree. All right. It is a recognized fact that exists, and this child has it. But it's a fact in psychiatry. It's not a fact that's universal. And it's a fact which requires the interpretation of that as attention deficit by people in that circle. And it obviously has a judgmental quality to it. That's not good. We don't like that. No one likes that. We must cure it. So yes, it's a fact, but it is a fact in a particular group in the world. who treat it that way. So this issue becomes much more difficult when you get to things like our past president Trump. I mean, then you have to do a lot of work about why something is a lie and why it is wrong. But just for now, I don't want to make a clear distinction between facts and judgments and interpretations, because all of them are co-constructed. Physics is a co-construction in physics, just as the human spirit is a co-construction in the Catholic Church.
Thank you.
And it may seem radical, but again, I can unfold it even further. But
I'm gonna try to do it in English. Excuse me if it isn't so better, so good. I think, Kenneth, first of all, thank you so much for all that you have shared with us. I'm gonna do a little philosophical reflection. No, I think it's very important that you have shared, because it sends us to the concept of the own person, of the home human with we are working with. In the case of education, many times, and the social affairs too, sometimes the people that are working in that usually think that we are the main character. We are the center of the intervention. We think in the other, with the people with we are working, and the object of our charity, the object of our goodness, the object of our help, and not like a subject of rights, or a subject that has a very important word about her own life. This sends us to the participation in the school, in the social projects, to see the young people, to childhood, like a subject, not as an object. That in where the center of the intervention of the work is their own child, their own young people, and not us. I don't think I have explained me very well.
could you share that in Spanish?
Yes. Yo quería decir que muchas veces en la educación y en el trabajo social nos ponemos a nosotros mismos, a las personas que trabajamos ahí, como el centro, como las personas que ejercen la ayuda, como personas que ejercen la caridad, como personas que ayudan al otro. Y trasladamos al otro, a la persona que está aprendiendo, a la persona que está en un proyecto social, como un objeto de nuestra ayuda, como un objeto de nuestra caridad, como un objeto. Y todo lo que tú nos has compartido nos remite a poner a la persona en el centro. No somos nosotros los que ayudamos, y no es la persona la que es protagonista de su vida, protagonista de sus decisiones, protagonista de su aprendizaje, protagonista de su vida, en una palabra. Y esto, pues, que estás hablando nos remite a la participación, a cómo colocamos a las personas que están en una escuela, que están en un proyecto social, y a la participación que les damos, que les dejamos tener en estas situaciones.
Vale, voy a traducir esto y vamos a ir terminando. So he felt very inspiring what you were saying, because what happens that as educators, we put ourselves in the center. And actually, we should put in the center the person we are accompanying or helping, because that person is in charge of their own lives, of their own learnings, of their own decisions. And so he finds this is very important, that we are not treating others as objects.
I agree with that up to a point. And I'm certainly in sympathy with moving out of the self. But there's a part of me, and some of you have read, I realize from the chats, a book on relational being, which is in Spanish, to try to move from I help you become yourself, to realize that you are both creating each other in the relationship. And that I cannot help you unless you're participating. And I become something in that relationship too. That is, to ask increasingly how we are managing together. So that person is not going to be leading their own life. They're leading a life with others. And that's inescapable. So again, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just trying to extend that idea as much as possible to put the focus on the us, on the collaborative relationship, and how we become in that relationship, and how to scaffold that so we become something that is good in the world. So yeah, that's just to press out that way of thinking.
Thank you so much. Gracias, muchísimas gracias por estar aquí presentes. Y bueno, vamos a colgar la grabación de la primera parte. Vamos a ver la segunda parte también, cómo lo hacemos. So we are gonna put the video of this recording so that people can have access to it, and I will send it to you. And thank you very much. Muchísimas gracias a todos. Vamos a sacar a Pep de la traducción, so that Pep can say hello to you, because he's been translating.
Hello, Ken.
Thank you, Pep. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I must say that you speak very good English. Thank you.
A lot of practice.
Muchísimas